guys, it's Reagan and I have a new angle for you, so huzzah! So today I'm gonna be filming my December wrap-up. Now the month of December was, I would say, a pretty good reading month for me. I read a total of 8 books, and I enjoyed most of them. But anyway, let's go ahead and show you everything that I've read for this month. So the very first book I completed this month was The Enchanter Heir by Cinda Williams-Chima. This is the 4th book and the first book of the continuation of the Heir series by Cinda Williams-Chima. Going in, I have to say I was a little concerned because I hadn't read the Heir series since middle school, which I'm a sophomore in college, so you can do the math on how long ago that was. So I was a little concerned that it was gonna thrust me back into this world and I wasn't gonna remember anything. That concern was for nil because this series follows a whole new cast of characters and a whole new problem has been presented. I really can't say what that problem is because it would kind of spoiler the first series and I don't want to do that. But I will disclaimer saying if you have read the Heir series, you don't need to reread it to read this new series. I found this book to be a pretty good continuation. I enjoyed the characters. I read it super quick. Her writing, to me, I just eat it up. I will say it was definitely not my favorite book she's ever written. I ended up giving it a 4 stars. I found it to have a little bit of insta-love and it was just it was solidly good, but it wasn't great. And I'm excited to continue on with the series and complete it though, so 4 stars. The next book I completed is without its dust jacket, so it's naked. It is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This book has been a book that has been very hyped on the booktube community and has been a book I've been meaning to read for a very long time. And I have to say, I really enjoyed it. This book follows a multitude of characters, but our main character is Blue, and she's a young girl who lives in a town in Virginia. And basically her whole family are psychics. She's just been surrounded by magic of some sort for her whole life. And in the area of Virginia that she lives in, there's these magical sources called ley lines. They just possess a lot of power, and these ley lines kind of bring Blue into contact with the Raven Boys. These 4 boys are on the quest to find these said ley lines. Like I mentioned, I very much enjoyed this book. I found the writing and the characters to be very whimsical, and I don't know, they seem to just be so different than a normal YA character that we normally receive in a book, and I just really loved them. I really loved all of the characters and I thought they were so witty and so cool and refreshing. I really liked that perspective. The plot was pretty good. It was a little predictable for me towards the end, so I ended up giving this a 4.5 out of 5 stars, but I really enjoyed it and I'm excited to continue on with the rest of the series. I want to mention also, a lot of people who read this say that it's confusing in the first 100 pages. I didn't think so necessarily. So I know a lot of people are hesitant to pick this up because they've heard that it's confusing. I didn't think so. I thought it was just supposed to be like that. But that's just me. Just thought I'd let you know. The next book I completed was The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. This is the book I've been highly anticipating as I read that synopsis, as many of you know, and I quickly fell in love. This novel was different than I was expecting. That kind of happens when a synopsis is so unclear about what the book is actually about. I personally think that this book is perfectly fine to tell you what it's about because the whole thing is revealed within the first 30 pages. This novel follows a young girl who lives in a facility in the United States, and basically she lives in a world where a zombie-like plague parasite has infected the population and has kind of put the world at a halt like zombie apocalypses do. She's a very interesting girl that lives in this facility, and it follows her perspective, which is very nice because she's a child, so she's very naive and she's learning, and I love that childlike view she has in the world, which is very creepy and very interesting to read from. But we also have different perspectives of people who are also living within this facility. I would say if you like The Walking Dead and you kind of like that feel of The Walking Dead, you would really like this book, because that's honestly what I kept thinking about when I read this. I was like, this reminds me of The Walking Dead. They're not the same story by any means, but they have a very similar feel. I ended up giving this book a 4 or 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really liked it. I thought it was unique. The ending was a little strange. I definitely didn't see that coming, I will say, and very interesting. The next book I picked up was The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book and like the spin-off to the Mistborn trilogy. So basically there's a lot of people ask about this. So there's the Mistborn trilogy that is like the base trilogy, and then this trilogy, The Alloy of Law, is set 300 years after the events that happened in the first book. So they're just kind of set in the same world. Think like Mortal Instruments kind of situation, but very different. So this is like a Western detective book. It follows our main characters, Waximilius and Wayne. So Wax and Wayne, pretty great name. And it's great because it's a flintlock fantasy. Am I using that correctly? It's a high fantasy novel that's using guns and more advanced technology, which I thought was very exciting. Basically, we're following our main character in this, Waximilius. I can't even say his name. Wax. We're following our main character, Wax, who, for a large portion of his life, 20 years, has been living in kind of the Outlands, which is kind of an area with no law, very much like the Wild Wild West. And then he comes back into town because he's a lord and he has to take up his lord, you know, duties. And crime starts to spark in the city, and so he takes that on his own shoulders. It's a really fun, fast-paced book. I thought it was good. It definitely is not the best thing I've read by Brandon Sanderson by far, but I liked the flintlock fantasy elements. I really liked the gun technology intermixing with like a magic system. So I'm interested to read more flintlock fantasy in the future, but yeah, I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I read The Rosie Project by Graham Simpson. This is a adult chick lit novel following a man who is extremely smart. He's a geneticist, but he's horrible with people. Like he has very interesting quirks. Think like Sherlock, Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory. He's very much like that. But he has determined that he wants to find a wife. So he comes up with this wife project. Basically, he creates a survey that narrows out all the undesirable candidates so he can find the perfect wife that fits him and his personality like to the T. While he's doing this, he runs into this woman called Rosie who needs his help to help locate her biological father because he's a geneticist. Anyway, this book is really cute, very, very, very funny. I thought our main character, Don, was so great to read in this book. Literally, he was so quirky and so unable to socialize properly that I sometimes was laughing out loud. I will say this wasn't the greatest like chick lit romance I've ever read. It was highly enjoyable, and I can see a lot of other people enjoying this as well. So if you like that sort of Sheldon, Sherlock character finding love, you might want to check this out. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, I wanted to pick up a graphic novel, so I picked up volume 3 of the Amulet graphic novel series. I've mentioned this a lot on my channel. This is a middle grade fantasy graphic novel series that I really, really enjoy. It's illustrated and written by Kabu Kibuishi, which is the guy who did the Harry Potter box set. His illustrations are unbelievably beautiful. Like, they're so pretty. Like, look at it. Look at it. The story is a lot of fun. It follows a young girl who kind of finds some secret history about her family, and she kind of gets sucked into another world and she has to just save it essentially. You know, typical like hero fantasy setup, but it's really great, super fun. I highly recommend it for a quick read or anything like that. It's really lovely. The next book I read this month really surprised me in a good way, and it was The Winter's Curse by Marie Rutowski. This has gotten a lot of hype on BookTube. I'm sure a lot of you have already seen this and heard of it. But for some reason, I was super hesitant to pick it up because I thought I wasn't going to like it because it just seemed to me like a cliche fantasy young adult love story. And it's not, but it also is, but it's not. This book follows a young girl, like many young adult books do, that's set in a world that's very much modeled after like our past, you know. People wear dresses, people have code of conduct for like social events, there's balls, there's galas, things like that. But it's different in the sense that in this society, people are either like in that realm, like social, if you're in the upper class, like socializing at balls and stuff, or you're in the military. Military in her society is huge, and her father is like the general in the military, and he really wants her to join the military, but she is not interested. Also in this society, because it's such a military state, it conquered another state. In the state that it's conquered, all those citizens became slaves. And so in the beginning of the book, our main female protagonist buys one of these slaves and sets off a very complicated amount of political events within the city. Much to my surprise, I found this was very heavy in the political end, which I really, really enjoy. There was a lot of complex, like, nuances to the politics. It wasn't just straight up right and wrong, it wasn't black and white. There's a lot of gray area, and so I felt like a lot of the tension in the book was well-founded because I didn't know the solution. Yes, the story is mainly a romance, but it fostered naturally. I didn't feel like there was any sort of insta-love. And I honestly found the writing to just be really lovely to read. Like, it was just very enjoyable. Like, I enjoyed this book a lot. And I ended up giving it a 4.5 or even a 5 stars. And I'm really excited for The Winter's Crime that's coming out in March because I've heard great things. People have already gotten ARCs, and this book, probably the best book I read this month, so there you go. And the last book I read this month was a total disappointment. You've probably seen it recently in my haul, and that's Brilliance by Marcus Sacchi. Basically, I was so excited for this book because I was under the impression, wrongly, that I was going to be following this group of individuals with weird powers that's kind of ostracized them from society, and they're like fighting against the man, whatever. No. This book follows a man who is a brilliant, but he works for the government, who is for his task with the job to fight against these brilliant terrorists. And, you know, it's stuff like that. To me, it was just like a cliche, like, Bourne Legacy cop novel, but with like a science fiction twist. I was very disappointed, and the writing I thought was kind of cheesy. It read to me like a screenplay or like a cop show. To put it simply, I just didn't like this. And to be honest, if you like cop books or if you like detective books, you might want to check this out, because I'm not a huge fan of like cop or military or like Brad Thor or Lee Child or anything like that. It's not really my taste, so I was just kind of not super happy about this book. I was highly disappointed, and I gave it a 2.5 stars. For all the books I completed this month, however, I'm going to quickly mention that I read 255 pages of A Storm of Swords by George R.R. Martin. So that will be continuing on into the next month. I don't know why this book takes me so long to read, but it does. Alrighty guys, those are all the books I read in the month of December. Let me know down below your favorite book of this month, and I will see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye!